So this class today is going to be talking about the journey home and the purpose of time. So I remind you that we're looking at this chart. We're going over it bit by bit, talking about everything that's on the left-hand columns. It does exist. Everything that's in the right-hand column does not exist. So we're more probably looking more about why something doesn't exist than why it does, because automatically, if it doesn't, then there's an opposite that does. Today, we're going to be talking more about time and eternity, and also the journey that's involved in time. That we're going to be talking also about learning devices, the mind, the body, time, and the world are like four big ones, but also Miracle's a learning device, forgiveness is a learning device, holy instant learning device, and examples of learning devices. Of these four that are on top, only the mind is real. The body, nope, it has its time. Time has its time, and the world has its time. Every time is a key factor in all of these, right? So going on. So of course says that all are called, but few choose to answer. This is very important. And I'm going to read you this. Actually, let me go on to here. This is actually the lesson from Tuesday of this week, but it fit in so perfectly with what we're studying here that I wanted to spend some time going over it. This is just the first paragraph, that's all. I will be still an instant and go home. This world you seem to live in is not your home to you. And somewhere in your mind, you know that this is true. I mean, how often have each of us not had that experience, perhaps like this lady standing on the rock, of just kind of looking out into the distance and very much aware of the fact that there must be something more, that this alone, this body, what I'm saying, this cannot be the height of what experience is or what truth is. A memory of home keeps haunting you as if it were a place that called to you to return, although you do not recognize the voice or what it is the voice reminds you of. Home is a very, very frequent reference to heaven. Heaven and home are equals, meaning it's the place that you are. That's where you really are. It's where you live in a permanent state. So that's one of the reasons why this world is a dream. It's a dream because actually, of course, is your other life has continued uninterrupted. So you're actually there now. Now that may not seem that way, but actually you're already a part of heaven, you're already home, you're already there. And so that then makes this world and this experience a dream. And you think, well, this doesn't seem like a dream. Well, there's a lot of dreaming that's going on, actually, a lot of making up of the world that's happening on all different kinds of levels. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. So let me go back to the quote. Yet still you feel an alien here from somewhere all unknown. Actually, I kind of remember, not with any kind of clarity, but at the age of 9, I've talked about it before, standing on the back of our farm on a cistern and looking around and just kind of being awed by everything. It was in the springtime, and really kind of wondering what's really going on, what's happening beyond the level that we were all being told. Nothing so definite that you could say with certainty you are in exile here. So this is the big question mark. What's really behind everything we see? Just a persistent feeling, something not more than a tiny throb, at other times hardly remembered, actively dismissed, but surely to return to mind again. So this is not something that just happens to us once. There are time after time after time. You may find yourself in a position, again, like the lady on the rock, where you're just maybe sitting on your back deck or sitting on your porch or just sitting in silence in your living room and kind of wondering is really what's really going on beyond what I can see. So the Course says you will undertake a journey. We're going to talk about the journey process next week, because you are not at home in this world, and you will search for your home, whether you realize where it is or not. If you believe it's outside you, the search will be futile, or you'll be seeking it where it is not. So if any way that you think that the answer that you're asking is in the world, it's not in the world. You'll never find it in the dream itself, and the dreaming of the world itself. It's not in the dreaming of the world. It's in a deeper, it's a reality, which is not part of any kind of dream of anything that we see, but it's something that we know very much. So then the Course says that the sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. So to accept the atonement for oneself means the undoing of the ego. And as we undo the ego is, if you will, kind of the mask, the taking off the mask. It's really in the way of our remembrance, because if you think that what's true is power, fame, money, physical pleasures, what the stuff that's going on in the world, you are going to be disillusioned. So our job is to undo the ego and its hold on our minds. It's the same job faced with sages and enlightened ones throughout time. So anybody that goes on the deep end search, by that I mean Jesus and the Buddhas and those who really stop the world. I mean, they go into meditation and begin to find something. It takes quite a while actually to do that, but and we don't. Most of us have time to do that. I mean, to stop and just meditate until you get to enlightenment. But we do have this wonderful guidebook called A Course in Miracles. And by following the path of the Course, we can come to the same conclusion. So the mind that decides for me, this is Jesus speaking, is also in you. And you can let it change you just as it changed me. This mind is unequivocal because it hears only one voice. So the voice in the mind is the voice for God. And it's the one voice the Course refers to as the voice of the Holy Spirit, which is coming away consistently. By consistently, I mean there's actually never a moment, there's never a second when that voice is not there. It's like a broadcasting in the air, and the task is simply one of tuning in. You can probably do that better as you do stop to kind of meditate or be reflective, but it can happen at any time. I used to have a friend named John Lilly, who was a really interesting author. He called driving the American mode of meditation, and you can sort of see how driving could be the American mode of meditation, and even there's a positive sense in that. Last May, a year ago, when I went to give some talks in Germany, the woman who took me back to the airport, it was a couple hours back to the airport. While we're going along a particular stretch of the road, she says, once before I went along this stretch of road, and she says, and I didn't remember it at all. I kind of woke up. Instead, you can kind of go into, you're driving, you're okay, you see the other cars, you're doing all the things that you're supposed to do, but somehow or another, you've sort of slipped into this other state where, although you're still aware and you're still being safe, at the same time that that's true, the mind goes into another dimension. So the Holy Spirit is the call to awaken and be glad. Be glad that the world that you see is not real. Be glad that these wars, one day they will end. The insanity will stop. And it stops, of course, in you. When you stop being insane, when you stop finding fault with the world, when you stop complaining, when you stop being angry. That's the first step. Stop the complaining, stop all the negative judgment, and then you can't be projective and receptive at the same time. It's that simple. So as long as we're projecting our analysis of the world onto the world, we're not going to be really able to see anything other than what we're projecting. Projection makes perception. There's two kinds of projections. We'll talk about that later. So the world is very tired because it's the idea of weariness. Our task is the joyous one of waking it, that is the world, to the call for God. So your job, simply put, we talked about this before, just a quick review, with this, we project either wrong-mindedness or right-mindedness. Wrong-mindedness is the criticizer, the attacker, the thing that's finding fault with the world. Right-mindedness loves the world, loves everything it sees, and only gives love to the world. I imagine Jesus as someone who did nothing but radiate love, and people who were around him saw that, experienced that, and there's no way that they could not love him back. And now the Course in Miracles is asking us to do the same thing he did. Is a joyous one of waking it, that is the world, to the call for God. So and the way you do this is just very simply by loving it, loving the world, loving the people that are standing online with you at the grocery store and every place else. We're all temporarily in bodies with our minds, living in a variety of matrices. That is, stories or dreams, mental constructs, societal systems that keep us constrained and obligated to traditional ways of living in the world. So we're all born into a particular family, into a particular point of view, into a particular construct, into perhaps a particular religion. And all of those provide us with a definition of what the world is. It's not what we, of course, we'll call the real world, but it's just the world that's being given to us. And we buy that because we don't have any choice. As young children, you got to be carefully taught. You got to be taught to hate and fear. You got to be carefully taught from the movie. And different societies build different matrices, that is dreams, which often swing from open to closed-mindedness. So it's kind of interesting what happens. We go from liberal to conservative to just back to liberal again, back to looking for some kind of balance. Many of you, and we got Tucker here on with us, I and Tucker, and a lot of the rest of you too, were really pretty strongly involved in what was called the New Age movement and the open of a certain kind of liberality which didn't exist before, another way of seeing. This was the time of Woodstock took place, and music and hair and Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar, and just this whole new way of thinking that was going on, and different way of dressing that was going on for a while, and wearing long hair and all that sort of stuff, which sort of scared our parents who grew up but who were active in the 1950s. And now I think we're seeing a different kind of swing that's going on in our society. There's one going toward the conservative side, and maybe later it's going to come back to the more liberal side. We're somewhere kind of trying to find a balance between these places, right? This is one of the reasons I like Taoism and Buddhism in particular, is that they're much more kind of centered and balanced in terms of where they're getting us to. So how do we get here? How do we find our way through this maze? A primary task is to figure out how we get out of the illusion that defines the world we see. At that same time that we're getting out of the illusion, it's very helpful for us not to attack the illusion. If you attack the illusion, then you're making it real. Right? So some of you got to see the illusion, you see the dream, but you become, as I've said in the past, a lucid dreamer. In other words, you see what's going on, but you don't attack it. But that doesn't mean that you buy it, but neither do you condemn it. One of my favorite exercises, 268 from the workbook, let all things be exactly as they are. So let the world be what it is. And at the same time, I don't become seduced by it. I don't become seduced by it. I maintain a patient, awareness that enables me to be here and calm at the same time. So the course says the true resolution rests entirely on our mastery through love. Mastery of the world rests on our mastery through love. So we're neither attacked nor condemned nor become angry with, but at the same time, we don't also buy into insanity. So I asked AI, it's amazing what you can ask AI, anything in the world now. What were the, you give me the examples of the most low ritualistic religions, the rule-ridden religions. So what I mean that these are the ones that have the strictest structure and the most definition about where reality is. And if you're part of that structure, then you pretty much have to follow what that structure says and kind of do what's being asked to do. Otherwise, you're breaking the structure. And, that's not a cool thing to do within the side of the structure, even though you may very well have to do that. You may have to step aside, right? And this was the order in which it presented it. And then it also gave me a list of those that are more open-minded. So let's also remember that open-mindedness, the Course in Miracles says, is the 10 characteristics of a teacher of God are in order from trust and honesty up through open-mindedness. It says perhaps the last characteristic a teacher of God develops. So open-mindedness is where we want to be. At the same time, we're not condemning what's happening here. We're just observing what it is. So the Orthodox Judaism is the strictest, with vast systems of commands and rabbinical rulings governing everything: diet, Sabbath observances, prayer, the way you dress, sex, commerce. All this is very highly controlled. And there's, for example, 613 mitzvot or commandments and rabbinical extensions. That's a lot. That's 613, right? Which cover our daily life and ritualize and regularity, the way things are to be observed. I might add, just as a little point of interest, the largest Hasidic community in the United States, other than the one that's in Brooklyn, is right here, right next to where we live, just about 2-3 miles from where we are, is Kiryas Jael, which is a huge and growing very, very rapidly and getting much, much bigger all the time. And you see them walking around, even in the summertime, in these heavy black coats and heavy big hats that they wear. And you think, oh, it must not feel so good to have to wear those kind of clothes. But that's part of the dress is very clear, right? But in the middle of the summer, right? And then Islam too has the Sunni and Shia have very strict laws that they have to be regarding again, dress like a hijab, marriage, criminal laws, dietary laws. See what all of these are, they're all matrices. We also grow up within the context of a matrix. And we adjust to that matrix, or if we can't work with it, then we may try to make some adjustments in it, or we may completely step outside of it to try to find a new kind of liberation or way of being in the world. Catholicism as well is covered with canon law, sacrament, fast, confessions, and moral codes, and holiday observances, hierarchical obedience. And in Hinduism, with its dharma rules and caste-based society, dietary laws, ritual purification. And this is the kind of point at which the religions become so structured and this happens over time. It becomes more and more and more laws are introduced. Now, I don't create a slide for this, but at the same time, I ask AI which are the more open-minded. And more open-minded, interestingly enough, are the more mystical, or Sufism, for example. But mysticism within regard to any particular tradition, Buddhism, Taoism, right? The liberal branches of Christianity, etc. Just keeping in mind, we all have these cultural structures, and it's not our job to attack the structure. If you're in one of these, you may want to step out of it. That's your point of view. So the world is filled with temptations for the ego, which is what we call the devil, power, fame, money, physical pleasures. If this is what you're going for, if this is what's key, if this is what you think is what the world is all about, you can go for all these things and have bigger, more luxurious cars and all that kind of stuff. But these really all are kind of really distractions to keep us from waking up. We must all make up our way through this amazing matrix that we call the world. Remember who we are, why we're here, and how to get home. Fortunately, for those of us who are students of the Course in Miracles, we have a guide. If we're willing to listen to that guide and follow his way, now we're going to encounter temptations along the way. Three great temptations, are put before Jesus. The last one of which, for example, is that the devil, the ego, takes him to a high mountain and he says, look here, bow down and worship me, the ego, and all these kingdoms of the world can be yours. All this can be your property. You can own all this stuff, all right? And Jesus answers to each temptation the same way. He says, get thee behind me, Satan. In other words, get thee behind me, ego. I'm not going to pay attention to you. The same thing happens in the life of Buddha 500 years before Jesus. Has three daughters, or three temptations: desire, fear, and ego. And he's tempted by Mara, who has these daughters. And it's interesting what Jesus says, get thee behind me, Satan. And I kind of like what the Buddha says. What the Buddha says is, I see you, Mara. I see you, temptation. I see you. I see this attempt to take me off my path. And I get it, but we all have these temptations all the time. It may be temptation to overeat or to drink or whatever it is that the temptation is, or to get angry or to get upset. But at the time, when that's happening, that the temptation is there. That's why, Ken Wapnick says the most important thing in the Course is our choice, the decision maker. That decision maker is always there. And if you listen carefully, the part of what's happening with the Course is you will get more and more clear about just following the Holy Spirit's guidance. And if you do that, then really things begin to open up for you in really clear ways, because you then will also be more loving in your approach to the world, and the world will see that more loving approach, and the world will very naturally love you back. So a core message of the Course is that what we call reality as a collective construct is an illusion. By illusion, that there's no answer. Devil doesn't have it, Mara doesn't have it. True freedom comes in awakening to the truth. We must learn to distinguish the truth, that is reality, from illusion, or to be aware of the dream, but not get caught in the dream. The message of the Course is that we can awaken to a greater truth. We must navigate this matrix by relying the things that come our way through revelation. Now, this is very important. We've talked about it before, but just emphasize it. Chapter 1, Section 2, Time, Revelation, and Miracles. And the way that the Course works is the more that you can kind of work the Course, the more you will find that these revelations, the ahas, are going to slip into your awareness. And by following that awareness, that's what you want to do. So the world can be overcome through awareness, resolution, and the belief in oneself. Again, the true resolution rests entirely on a mastery through love. We must navigate the world peacefully, without being seduced by its temptation. God has kept your kingdom for you, but he cannot share his joy with you until you know it, with your whole mind. Revelation is not enough because it's only communication from God. God does not need revelation returned to him. That would be silly, which would clearly be impossible. Anyhow, you can't tell God what to do, but he does want it brought to others. So as revelation comes to you, then what you want to do is to share that revelation, that truth, that deeper knowledge that you're seeing. And as you share that, which is something automatically that you want to do as a student, then that's going to work, because then it expands the mind. ideas, right? Ideas are not things. They don't have a form, but an idea is something that you can give away. If it's a loving idea that you give away, that then expands it. And maybe that person will accept it and they'll expand with it themselves. I'll start this part over again. This cannot be done with the actual revelation. Its content cannot be expressed because it is intensely personal to the mind that receives it. It can, however, be returned by that mind to other minds through the attitude, the knowledge from the revelation brain. And this is from the Acts of Thomas the Apostle. When I was doing doctoral studies, I had to become proficient in Koine Greek. That's the Greek that the Bible is written in, the New Testament is written in. That was in seminary as well. And I had to translate this as a part of my studies, and I just loved it. So it's older than the Act of Thomas because it's included as a story that was around before this was written, and this was written in the 3rd century. And it's a very short story, but I'm going to just read it. A young man dwells in a marvelously rich kingdom. His parents send him on a mission with provisions great yet light so that he can carry them. Before he leaves, he removes his robe of glory and splendid mantle. In his heart is inscribed a message concerning his mission. He is to obtain a pearl of wisdom lying in the middle of a sea, encircled by a snorting serpent. Making his way downward, he is accompanied at first by 2 royal envoys. The path is treacherous and difficult, and he is young. Having reached this new world, this earth, he disguises himself in a body like those around him, and he keeps to himself until he recognizes an older anointed one, with whom he develops a mutual trust. His friend tries to warn him about the unclean ones, who, when they see that he is not a countryman, they ingratiate themselves against him. But he falls prey to the unclean ones, who, with cunning, mix drink and give him their meat. He falls asleep and becomes unaware of his mission. He forgets that he's a king's son. He forgets the pearl of wisdom. His parents learn of all that befall their son and write a letter that calls him to awaken, rise out of sleep, break free of his bondage, and remember his destiny. The letter comes in the form of an eagle, which becomes holy speech. At its voice, he awakens, embraces the letter, breaks its seal, and recalls in his heart the words of his father. He remembers that he is a king's son, a free-born soul. He remembers the pearl and the snorting serpent. Going to the serpent, he charms it to sleep by repeating to it his father's name. Seizing the pearl, he repairs for home, leaving behind his earthly garments. The voice of the letter now guides him with light, discourages his fears, and with this light draws him homeward. He had forgotten the robe of glory he had left behind in his youth. Seeing it again, he becomes a mirror image of himself. Myself entirely I saw in it, and it entirely I saw in myself. Clothed in his robe, he ascends to the gates of salutation and adores the splendor of his Father, who has sent him on his mission, as whose commandments he is now fulfilled. So, to be in the kingdom is merely to focus your full attention on it. As long as you believe you can attend to what is not true, you are accepting conflict as your choice. It's really a simple choice of not being caught in the nonsense of the world, but being able to maintain your peace and serenity. So the conflict is between the seeming reality of the world, underline the word seeming. The body and all those things look so very real itself, which has nothing to do with the external outside world or the world of the ego. We could say, is it really a choice? Is there really a choice between truth and illusion, between heaven and hell? It seems to be, but seeming and reality are hardly the same. You who are the kingdom are not concerned with seeming. That's a very important point in the course. It's going to say seeming reality is not reality. So the seeming reality is, quote, the what's on television, is the outside world. It's what's happening in the world, so to speak. It all seems very real, but let's keep in mind there's something deeper behind it all. There's another way of seeing. Reality is yours because you are reality, as spirit, as the truth you that you really are. This is how having and being are ultimately reconciled, not in the kingdom, but in your mind. The altar there is the only reality. The only reality is the reality you have in your relationship with God, with eternity, with the Son of God, with who you are and always have been. The altar is perfectly clear in thought because it is a reflection of perfect thought. Your right mind sees only brothers because it sees only in its own light. So this reflection of perfect thought is this that's a part of the waking up that happens with all of us in the mind as we let go of the insanity and accept our natural state of being, which is perfectly sane. So awaken from time. Time is the great illusion. The Course in Miracles, time is a vast illusion, which figures come and go as if by magic, but still an illusion. Awaken from the time and answer fearlessly the call of Him who gave eternity to you and your creation. Your eternal being, always have been. On this side of the bridge to timelessness, you understand nothing. The more caught in time we are, the more we're going to think that we understand, but we don't. But as you step lightly across it, upheld by timelessness, you are directed straight to the heart of God. At its center and only there are you safe forever, because you are complete forever. There is no veil with love of God in us together cannot lift. The way to truth is open. Follow it with me. And again, this is a central message of the Course. Pay attention to what I'm sharing with you. Follow me. So the purpose of time is to enable you to learn how to use time constructively. It is thus a teaching device and a means to an end. Time will cease when it's no longer used to facilitate learning. So we said to start, the time is a learning device, right? And we're in time for a reason. You're in a body, in a world, in time for a reason. You have something to learn. And the best thing you can do is to learn it, is to get it. And that's why we've got this wonderful text, which is very, very clear. One of the things that's remarkable about the Course is it may not seem clear in the beginning, but it's all written, it's perfectly clear. The more you go into it, the more you'll see that it's true. Time is neutral. What we do with time matters. It's a tool for the ego. You can reinforce the illusion. You can get more and more and more caught in power, fame, money, physical pleasure, and caught in the illusion. And seeking after these things, or by looking for enemies, is another word. Looking for enemies, finding problems in the world, pointing out this is stupid, that's an idiot, whatever, all those kind of projections, name calling, all that stuff we can throw out in the world is to amplify the insanity. It's not to heal it. Of course, it says, fear not that you will be abruptly lifted up and hurled into reality. Time is kind. If you use it on behalf of reality, it will keep gentle pace with you in your transition. So time is kind. We're in time to be given time to work things out in time. But you got to be willing to do that, to willing to engage, to willing to pay attention, to listen to the voice. And as Jesus once said to Helen, not in the Course, why don't you do what I'm asking you to do so you can hear my voice even more clearly. It's really that simple. So the more that we pay attention, and it's there, it's really very simple and very subtle all at the same time. And you know when you're making the right choice, and you know when you're making the wrong choice. So if you know which one is which, then it should make it easier to make the switch over to always choosing rightly. So the atonement was built into the space-time belief to set a limit on the need for the belief itself, and ultimately to make learning complete. One of the interesting things is the Course says very clearly is that this is very interesting, there's no learning in heaven. When you get to heaven, you're done. You graduate. You're out of time. Because time, the world where we're in now, that's time bound. There's no time in heaven. It's hard for us to imagine what a timeless state would be, but that's what it's talking about, a perfected, timeless state. With no nights and days, it's totally another dimension. The atonement is the final lesson. The complete undoing of the ego is the final lesson. This, I might add, can be scary. What's scary about it is that there's going to be a tendency to want to hold on, especially insofar as the body is the ego's chosen home. But we're all going to get to that point someday when it's going to be time to let go of the body. This can be done easily and simply, and you'll be good, but it also can be resisted and painful. Learning itself, like the classroom in which it occurs, is temporary. The ability to learn has no value when change is no longer necessary. The eternally created have nothing to learn. You can learn to improve your perception and can become a better and better learner. This will bring you into closer and closer accord with the sonship. But the sonship itself is a perfect creation, and perfection is not a matter of degree. Only while there is a belief in differences is learning meaningful. So we're moving beyond all differences. You don't see your brother as different, not in the eyes of God. We're not different from each other because God isn't looking at your body or even at the things you do in the world. God knows you only as the perfected child of God that you already are. We've got to come to that same conclusion, and that's where the work is, coming to that same conclusion. So time is a classroom in which we complete our assignments. The purpose is to restore everything to you, or rather to restore it to your awareness. You were given everything we were created, that I've had before. The most effective use of time is to seek the truth. Our true function in this world is to use time to undoing the belief in time through forgiveness, miracle-mindedness, and inner listening. So forgiveness, all that forgiveness really means is that you are being loving in each and every instance. You're letting go of the projective thought. So by letting go of the projective thought, projection is the opposite of forgiveness. Forgiveness is I'm letting you be who you are, even though I may have differences in agreement, I'm still going to let you be because that's the way I love you. It opens into miracle mindedness, which I think is part of what Stephen was talking about, and our inner listening. Again, you should become better and better at inner listening. So forgiveness is the only meaningful in time. It is the means the Holy Spirit uses to translate specialness from sin into salvation. This is the function, the most meaningful function in time. Again, it's just letting go, not having some sort of rigid idea about the way somebody else should be or the way things should be, or making judgments about that. Forgiveness means forgiving everyone all the time for everything. We stop time by stepping into now, just being present, no fear of any future nor guilt about any past. The ego would eventually make itself special and unique by comparison, contrast, or exclusion. It is based on the belief that one can be more or have more than others through separation, possession, or preference. So if you start thinking that you're better than somebody else because what your possessions are, or what you, and that can be all kinds of things, because you possess a better body or a better attitude or anything like that. That's all a part of the insanity. I love this last line from the quote. You are not special. And if you think that you are, and you defend your specialness against the truth of who you really are, how can you know the truth? So the truth is that we are all absolutely equal as brothers, and that's the way God sees. God sees us absolutely equal, brothers and sisters, and it doesn't matter if somebody in society or whatever is above you or below you, it's all equal. And that's why we should see each other and treat each other.